Hello and welcome viewers, I am Pia and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. On that note, let's take a look at the headlines this hour. China has launched a nationwide campaign to curb fire hazards in high-rise buildings after at least 128 people were killed in Hong Kong. The move marks one of the country's most urgent safety crackdowns as Hong Kong has entered its mourning period today. The Thai government has announced that floods in southern Thailand have killed 162 people, including 126 deaths in Songkhla province alone. The government spokesperson Siripong Angka Sakulikat has confirmed the casualties across 7 provinces, marking one of the deadliest flooding events in recent years. Ukraine's energy ministry has stated that a wave of Russian missile and drone strikes on the country has left over 600,000 people without power. The attack cut electricity to 500,000 in Kiev and 100,000 in the larger capital region, 8,000 in Kharkiv, marking one of the most disruptive strikes in months. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced the resignation of his chief of staff, Andrei Yermak, following an anti-corruption raid. He's called for national unity, warning that the country risks losing itself if divided. The European Union Aviation Safety Agency has issued Emergency Airworthiness Directive 2025-0268 after an Airbus A320 reported an uncommanded pitchdown, requiring immediate replacement. Effective from today, the directive has mandated modification before next flight, allowing only limited passenger-free ferry operations to prevent risks. US President Donald Trump has announced plans to cancel most of former President Joe Biden's executive orders. He has claimed that an auto pen was used improperly and Biden did not personally sign these documents. French President Emmanuel Macron will visit China next week to push for a partnership based on mutual interests. He plans to urge Beijing to treat Europe as an independent major partner. Pope Leo XIV, now on his first foreign trip, has visited Istanbul's iconic Blue Mosque on the 3rd day of his trip to Turkey, marking his first visit to a Muslim place of worship since his election in May. The highly symbolic 15-minute visit, following in the footsteps of late Pope Benedict and late Pope Francis, has sent a key message. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. According to reports, China has launched a nationwide campaign to identify and eliminate fire hazards in high-rise buildings. The move comes in the wake of a devastating blaze in Hong Kong that killed at least 128 people and sent shockwaves through a metropolis known for its dense clusters of towering residential blocks. Reports suggest almost 150 people are still missing. Reportedly, the State Council Work Safety Committee has recently issued a notice ordering an extensive inspection and rectification drive targeting major fire risks in tall buildings. Authorities will review the use of flammable or combustible materials and scrutinize construction practices as well, including the use of bamboo scaffolding and non-flame retardant safety nets. The directive urges local governments to strengthen oversight, assume full responsibility for fire safety management and prioritize the identification and remediation of high-risk structures. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Roger Liu, International Relations Researcher, joining us from Taipei. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. We're now learning that China has launched a campaign to identify and eliminate fire hazards in high-rise buildings. This, of course, comes in the aftermath of the tragedy in which 128 people lost their lives in Hong Kong. What can you tell our viewers about these hazards? How is it that they ensure that these blaze gets exacerbated and how their risk can then be reduced?
Well, I will say that this actually is the most lethal or deadly incidents that has ever taken place in the history of Hong Kong. And that actually people inevitably will blame this to the governance of the current Hong Kong government and the Chinese government as well. So that actually has reflected that Hong Kong's housing problem has been a long time issue, that people are forced to live in a very condensed place and they have to pay very high rents to live in very poor places. And this, well, it reflects that Hong Kong needs to be further incorporated and into the Great Bay Area city plans that China has launched. So I think this will be a problem that they will have to consider for the future.
Indeed, and we're also getting further developments. Hong Kong's anti-corruption agency, in fact, stated that it arrested 11 people connected to the renovation of the high-rise apartments where the blaze ended up claiming more than 100 lives. There are still about 200 people who are still missing. I wanted to understand from you, is corruption really prevalent in the sector? To what degree, if so? And does this then have a direct connection to the fire, or are we seeing this turn into some sort of a blame game?
Well, of course, China has to find some scapegoats to, to show its accountability responsibilities to the Hong Kong citizens. Well, ICAC, which is a watchdog being set up during the British colonial age, well, has played a very important role in combating the systemic corruption in the Hong Kong government. But they have not used it for a long time because, after Hong Kong's return back to China, well, China has been proud of its, governance of Hong Kong. But now they have to find out some people responsible for this incident. So, it's not surprising they will try to initiate this kind of mechanisms.
Absolutely. This has been a wake-up call for the Chinese government. But last but not the least, in your assessment, how could stricter scrutiny of the materials, the construction practices as well, impact the manner in which contractors operate? Because what is truly important is the fact that this short-term exercise ensures long-term compliance as well.
Yeah, well, what happens now actually is can raise an alarm, because this set of residents actually is a new project. It's not a very old ones that people have been seeing on movies or having existed for decades. So that actually reflects a deeper problem that the laws and regulations regarding this kind of fire has to be revised. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the Chinese government will try its best to prevent this to become a political event, because they are so afraid that some people will be using that to kind of combat or to damage their the capacity to rule over Hong Kong. And this will be a political problem for the Chinese government. So they will have to be very careful about this.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, of course, sharing your perspectives and providing insight to our viewers. On that note, we're shifting focus away from the aftermath of the tragedy in Hong Kong towards what's happening in Sri Lanka. We're now learning that Sri Lanka has issued an urgent appeal for international assistance as Cyclone Ditwa is wreaking havoc across the island nation, leaving 123 people dead and 130 missing. Heavy rains and flooding have destroyed nearly 15,000 homes, forcing over 44,000 residents into temporary shelters. Authorities have deployed thousands of Army, Navy and Air Force personnel to aid relief operations, while landslides have blocked roads and severed communication lines in remote areas. The Kelani River has burst its banks as well, prompting mass evacuations. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Harini Amarasuriya has met with foreign diplomats to coordinate support. We're also learning that India has sent two plane loads of relief supplies, has pledged further assistance as well. Meanwhile, officials in Sri Lanka have warned that the disaster's toll could in fact surpass previous flooding events, including the deadly 2016 floods. Recovery efforts are continuing, but there are fears of more rain, especially in the northern regions, leaving thousands in urgent need of aid. With us on the broadcast is Dr. Vinya Aryaratne, President of the Sarvodaya Shramdan Movement, joining us from Colombo. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. At the outset, I hope your family, your loved ones, your friends, you're all safe. I wanted to, at the outset, understand the impact in Sri Lanka as far as this particular cyclone is concerned. We're getting some rather tragic news that 123 people have lost their lives, 130 are missing, more than 44,000 people have been evacuated as well. In fact, despite the fact that, authorities have deployed the armed forces on the ground, rescue operations are also taking place. What's the situation right now?
Yes, thank you. So actually, our immediate loved ones are safe, but I represent an organization which is the largest humanitarian organization in Sri Lanka, development organization also, Sarvodaya Ramadana movement. So right now, the figures that you quoted have now being exceeded. I think our estimate is that yeah, the number of deaths have almost reached 200, and more than 200 people are still missing. And the number of families who have been affected surpass 100,000. So right now, more than 360,000 individuals, Sri Lankan citizens, are affected by this disaster. So as you mentioned, this is a disaster that happened after 2016 when we had a major flood. The uniqueness of this particular disaster is that it affected the entire country. Earlier, this type of hydrometeorological disasters, floods and landslides affected only certain districts. But here, all 25 districts in Sri Lanka have been affected. And also the cyclone, I mean, before the cyclone, we had heavy rain, and that also caused havoc. And with the cyclone, we now have the danger of, in addition to the damage already done, we have to get the people evacuated from the Kalani River that you mentioned, those who are living close to the Kalani River, because the river level is rising significantly, and that level of rise of water levels have not been seen in any time of the history of Sri Lanka. So it has had a tremendous impact, and we are providing emergency services. Government is leading in this effort, particularly search and rescue, and also running centers for the displaced population, which now is more than 300,000. So we provide the essential immediate services such as cooked food and also hygiene items, and providing water supply. And many organizations, including, of course, the government is taking the lead with all its entire government machinery being mobilized, including the security forces. And we, as non-governmental organizations, humanitarian organizations, we are on the ground responding to the situation.
Indeed, you have mentioned that you're on the ground. I wanted to understand what sort of hurdles are you facing, because we're getting these visuals, not just flooding, landslides have taken place as well. We can see some of the communication towers and the lines have fallen down as well, severing connection, especially in remote areas. So I wanted to understand what sort of hurdles, challenges are being faced at the moment, and what are the immediate priorities to address this?
Yes, so the main challenge is accessibility, because, as you said, in the central part of the country and also in certain other areas in the southern part of Sri Lanka, landslides are taking place, and then that blocks the road access even, and also the communication. We never had a problem of communication during previous disasters, including during the tsunami, which was the most severe disaster we faced. So connectivity is a problem, and even for the government security forces to go and reach the people who are trapped, they can't contact them. And because of the high wind, sometimes even the Air Force is unable to go. So it has to be always through boats, and the Navy has been mobilized. So there are many places still we don't know what is really happening, and government also is trying its best to restore communication. And also the people who are also in the same area have been affected in different ways. For example, the housing destruction is massive, and also, even though the flood levels are residing in some areas, it's not safe for people to go back. So those are the challenges that we are facing, but mainly it's connectivity, communication, and also being unable to reach the people. Even we have resources, so the Indian government has kindly offered, and we have a rescue team also now who have come to help our government.
And last but not the least, I do want to understand what is your appeal to the world, to the audience that is watching us.
So basically, I think there's any assistance that those of you who are watching this, particularly the governments, development agencies, if they can provide assistance through the government or through non-governmental organizations at this very difficult emergency phase, then the impact on the economy and the livelihoods of people is also very significant. So we probably need assistance for recovery as well. So, and even if you can't provide any material assistance, we would like you to be in solidarity. Pray for the people who are affected. They are healing, and that spiritual energy can also affect us positively.
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank you and, of course, wish you luck for the relief efforts that are taking place. Of course, a terrible tragedy, and, of course, wishing strength to the people of Sri Lanka to overcome this crisis. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus away from Sri Lanka towards news coming in from the United States of America. Some key geopolitical developments are taking place. According to US media, US President Donald Trump spoke on the phone line with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro last week, discussing the possibility of a meeting in the United States. The reported call comes as President Trump continues a dual track of military pressure and potential diplomacy towards Venezuela. The Trump administration has long labeled Maduro an illegitimate leader and accused his government of involvement in drug trafficking, allegations that Caracas strongly denies. Since early September, the US has been bombing alleged drug boats in the region, a practice critics describe as extrajudicial. Earlier, President Trump again threatened to expand those strikes to land-based targets as well. This follows months of US military buildup in the Caribbean and authorization of covert CIA operations in Venezuela. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. Interestingly, the Trump administration also designated the Cartel of the Suns as a terrorist organization, claiming that Maduro heads this. Venezuela, of course, has outrightly denied the existence of this particular cartel, but critics within the United States argue that Trump could use this in order to circumvent congressional approval and strike the heart of Caracas. So a lot of build-up has been taking place. So we do know the US's largest aircraft carrier, the Gerald R. Ford, that's also stationed in the Caribbean as of now. What do you make of this phone call at the outset? Trump, of course, on one hand, flexing the US's military might, but keeping the conversation line open.
This is a new development, keeping the conversation line open, mainly because the threat of land bombardment or invasion has brought the Chinese and the Russians into play. And they have made statements that they will support Venezuela in the event that America attacks. So this escalation becomes a little too much. It was a one-way street up to now. You're bombing Venezuelan ships, you're threatening Maduro without Maduro being in a position to do very much about it, particularly with the kind of firepower that the US has put in the Caribbean in close proximity. So it did look like he would try something on the ground inside Venezuela, but now I think there is a change in policy. It is a carrot and stick. If Maduro goes to speak to Trump in America, in Washington, possibly they will come up with some kind of accord that while you cannot expect Maduro to agree that he's a drug lord and that his country is exporting drugs to America. Some kind of easing of tensions is probably on the cards now.
Indeed. And in your assessment, what's really prompted this shift in policy? Because we've been seeing a lot of criticism being mounted specifically from the Democrats within the United States of America, who are now criticizing Trump, saying that he's trying to circumvent the Congress. He's not really looking at congressional approval before he carries out possible strikes in Venezuela. We've also recently seen some congresspersons and senators release a video, in fact, reminding the troops of their duty to obey only lawful orders as well.
This and that the Democrats are an opposition party, obviously they would mount this kind of pressure. And because there is very little difference between the strengths of the Republicans and the Democrats, both in Congress and in the Senate, they have biting teeth as well. They can make trouble for Trump more and more as you come towards the midterm elections. And so that's one part of it, definitely from within the country. But externally, as I mentioned, China and Russia have warned America that they will come to the assistance of Venezuela in the event there is any attempt at a land invasion of any kind.
All right, sir. Requesting you to stay on with us. Of course, we're shifting our focus to some developments that we're tracking this time from Germany. Germany's far-right political party, the AfD, is launching a new youth wing in Gießen after disbanding its previous organization, the Jungle Alternative, which had been labeled as an extremist one by intelligence services. The new group, likely to be named Generation Youthland or Youth Germania, will choose its leadership, statutes and logo, with 28-year-old Jean-Pascal Rome expected to become its first leader. Civil society groups have started major counter-protests, though their proximity to the conference remains uncertain. Listen in.
Wir sind heute hier, weil wir ein ganz klares Ziel haben, die Gründung der AfD-Jugend zu verhindern. Das ist eine rechtsextreme Jugendorganisation, die gegründet werden soll. Und wir sehen, das darf nicht passieren und das werden wir verhindern. Und wir werden mit unterschiedlichen Menschen, sehr, sehr viele Menschen kommen gerade an. Und es ist sehr, sehr schön zu sehen, dass so viele Menschen sich auf die Straße wagen, um gegen den Faschismus zu demonstrieren.
Critics have warned that the new youth wing may be just as radical as the JA, with scholars noting strong ties amongst its leading figures to far-right and ethno-nationalist networks. The AfD hopes a tighter integration of the youth wing will strengthen party unity, though it may make distancing from extremist positions more difficult. With us on the broadcast still is Mr. Gautam Mukherjee. We did see quite a shift in the German political landscape. The AfD did surge to become the second largest party in the Bundestag. It won 28% of the vote in the federal elections earlier this year itself. And now it seeks to expand even further, reach out to the youth. In particular, we've seen a similar strategy being adopted by the Republicans. Their campaign this time was quite prevalent on social media platforms, including TikTok. The youth reach was an interesting element. What do you make of the AfD's attempt to sort of follow in those footsteps?
I think this is all a reaction to too many immigrants, Islamic immigrants from Syria, who have been making a lot of trouble in Germany. And as a consequence, the new right is emerging. Germany has been careful since the Second World War to not follow right-wing politics. But now, over 50 years later, this is definitely on the way back, not just in Germany, but also in France. The point about it is the immigrants have not integrated. They are trying to hold the country to ransom as Islamists and wanting concessions as Islamists. It's got very little to do with the German nation. Germany has for long been employing people from Turkey who are also Muslims, but they have, while not quite integrating, they've stuck to themselves and not made any trouble. Of course, for a long time, Turkey was trying to become part of the EU, and this was probably one reason why the Turkish population, which was in several millions in Germany, did not make any trouble and still don't. As far as the involvement now, or the attempt to involve the youth, it indicates that in the future, it won't be just 28% right-wing, it may be a majority, and the left-wing politics of Merkel and the sort of moderate politics of the present government may be replaced with a more right-wing attitude in future.
All right, sir. With that, I'd like to thank you for taking our time sharing your analysis with us on these very crucial developments. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus to what the Pope is doing. Pope Leo XIV began his second day of his trip to Turkey with a visit to Istanbul's historic Blue Mosque. The stop echoed the actions of his recent predecessors, all of whom made symbolic visits to the mosque as a gesture of respect towards Turkey's Muslim majority. This marks Pope Leo's first foreign trip since becoming the first American to lead the Catholic Church. Following his time in Turkey, he is scheduled to visit Lebanon, where he is expected to address broader themes of peace in the Middle East. During the visit to the Blue Mosque, the head of Turkey's Diyanet Religious Affairs Directorate guided the Pope through the famed structure. The Vatican had announced that the Pope would take part in a brief moment of silent prayer inside the mosque, though it was not immediately clear whether the prayer occurred. Shifting focus to more news coming in. Hondurans are preparing to vote on the 29th of November, that is today, with the crime and the economy emerging as the leading issues on voters' minds. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has formally endorsed a right-wing candidate, Nasri Asfura of the National Party. Asfura is competing in a tight three-way contest facing leftist lawyer Rixi Moncada of the ruling Libre Party and right-wing television host Salvador Nasrallah of the Liberal Party. Voters in Tegucigalpa and across the country will be weighing these candidates' approach to public safety, economic pressures, and cast votes accordingly. Listen in.
Hemos estado con una canasta básica bien alta y antes pues hemos podido sobrevivir. Pero ahorita que el que quede, que ojalá que haga buen gobierno.
El país, la delincuencia está muy fuerte ahorita que está el gobierno de Xiomara, mucha delincuencia hay en la calle, mucho ladronismo, muchas personas desempleadas, muchos jóvenes desempleados, personas de la tercera edad están desempleadas, van a buscar trabajo los jóvenes, las personas mayores y no les dan trabajo.
La verdad es que yo, al menos yo en lo particular, yo voto por quien a mí me place, no porque lo que haya dicho Donald Trump. Porque la verdad es que yo vivo de lo que yo trabajo, no de los políticos. Y si yo siento votar por papi, voy a votar por él, y si no por cualquier otro. Así de fácil y sencillo, no porque Donald Trump me lo venga a imponer.
All right, viewers, due to paucity of time, that's all we have for this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.